Hi and welcome to OUTthink. My name is Lawrence Akers. I am a clinical hypnotherapist, a member of the LGBTQI community, and a passionate advocate for mental health. These podcasts have been made in the hope of sharing insight into issues that impact on the LGBTQI community. Today, we're continuing our conversation with Daniel Cordner, speaker from the Positive Speakers Bureau.
G'day, my name is Daniel Cordner. I'm a graphic designer. I'm a bike rider. I like to dig in the garden, vegetarian, I love to train handstands, and I've also been living with HIV for 11 years.
Thanks, Danny. So, look, you mentioned before the shame of your past. What things did you do to dismantle that shame, to resolve it?
That's a good question. For me to dismantle the shame, for a start, I guess primarily, I had to accept that I was HIV positive. And I thought that I'd accepted it, but I actually really hadn't. I think the real defining point there was once I came back from travel and I was told I had 2 AIDS-defining illnesses. I had oral candida and I had PCP pneumonia. And while I thought that I was okay with accepting that I'm HIV positive, to be told that I had AIDS-defining illnesses, I panicked. It's like, oh shit, I'm really not ready to accept that it's progressed to the next level. And I guess through that, I really had to accept, well, this is something that is living within me, that prior to travel, I guess I'd see my doctor every 3 months and I'd have my regular blood tests. And that was my little reality check. But the remainder of the 3 months, I didn't actually really need to acknowledge it. I didn't need to talk about it, and I didn't need to really do much about it. The virus was technically living in harmony with my body. Once I came back from travel, started taking medication every day, for me that was also a really great reminder, because each morning I take a tablet and I don't ponder it for hours on end, but it's just that little reminder of the fact that there is a virus living in my body and I need to pay attention to that. And I also need to acknowledge it and accept that as well too. And so for me, that pill is a good daily reminder of what I need to do in that acknowledgement. And to, I guess, dismantle the shame that is attached to that. Once upon a time, I probably would have never have taken a pill in front of somebody. Now it's fine. So it's sort of, I guess it's looking at it with different light. And as opposed to me being concerned about what other people will think, if I'm okay with it, then I can share that with other people.
I find it interesting also hearing your story that for a lot of people, they'll say that shame can be dismantled when you are able to speak it, when you're able to talk it, and it's greeted by like-minded people without judgment.
Yep.
And in those moments, shame can be completely destroyed.
Yep.
And, you're talking before about being able to talk about it and finding in those moments that there's a bit of a release around that.
Mm.
Given that you've also gone on to become a speaker, how do you feel about getting up in front of people nowadays and talking about HIV?
Now I love it. If you had have asked me 11 years ago that this is where I'd be today, I would have laughed at you and said, no, not me, someone else. For me, being a public speaker, for a lot of people, that comes with all sorts of challenges that you've got to overcome your fear, your nerves, the anxiety, and also just bearing your soul on a stage of people that could be sitting out there and judging you. What has come out of that for me is that because I feel so empowered each time I do a talk, whether it's to a school group, whether it's a peer support group, whoever that may be, I feel quite empowered by confidently sharing my story. And I'm not talking about, I touch upon the hardships and the difficult times, but I also talk about the great things that have come of that. And I think then by sharing the story, people can start to see that. They can see that, yes, the diagnosis was difficult and there's been challenges, but you've been able to overcome that. You've also been able to overcome your health issues through successful medication, and you've been able to overcome your own stigma and internalized issues around HIV through counseling services. So I think people see the story, they hear the hard parts, but they also see who I am today, and I've become a better person because of that. So I think once I'm standing in front of a school group, if I wasn't so comfortable with HIV, I don't think I'd be able to do the story justice. But I think through speaking about it so confidently, people then become curious about it. I actually had a friend on Facebook recently. It was the first time I'd publicly posted something about my HIV status on Facebook. And a friend that lives up in Brisbane, hadn't spoken to for a long period of time, picked up on it, sent me a personal message and was like, shit, I just saw your message. I just want to make sure you're okay. I'm really concerned about you. And it was really lovely to I didn't chuckle at all, but I kind of just went, I get where she's coming from and it's really sweet, but I just wanted to email her back and say, thank you so much for your concern. That's really beautiful, but it's actually okay. I'm going to live as long as you, and I'm going to live as healthy a life as you. There's challenges involved in there, but it felt really empowering to be able to share that with her and share that with her confidently that I was going to be okay, because she had greater fears than what I had, but I could understand her fears. But through my acceptance, through my public speaking, through my own education around STIs and HIV and treatments and everything linked to HIV, I was able to confidently just let her know it's going to be okay. And that was enough for her.
You mentioned at the start that obviously HIV now is very different to HIV back then. And a lot of that is thanks to the advancements in modern medicine, particularly PrEP as well, and PEP, and of course all the medications that people that are positive can take to help become undetectable. Tell us a little bit more about your thoughts around those.
I am a total advocate for PrEP, PEP as well. For me, I've said to quite a few people in recent times that in the conversation around PrEP, I always say if I had that chance to take PrEP 11 years ago, I would have done it in a flash. I would not have hesitated at all. At the time, 11 years ago, I didn't have that choice. PrEP wasn't around. PEP was around at the time, but I guess I wasn't as educated as what I am now, and I wasn't as heavily involved in the gay community, so I didn't understand enough about PEP at the time. I always say to a lot of people, why would you not want to lend a hand in helping eradicate new transmissions? Everyone can play a part in this. I feel very passionate about PrEP because it is a dual responsibility. It's no longer my responsibility and solely my responsibility as a HIV positive person to only manage that. Everyone out there in the gay community can play a part in that. And I guess the dream or the goal for many people within the gay community, many people living with HIV, is to end transmissions. A lot of people talk about a cure or a vaccine, and I'd love that as well. For me, the greatest concern right now is reducing new transmissions. And I play my part in that because I take medication every day. I have an undetectable viral load, and the risk is next to zero for me as far as being able to transmit that to someone. So what I love about PrEP is it means that it's also the negative people, it's their responsibility as well, that it doesn't just sit with me. So for me, that's why I'm a great believer of PrEP in what it can actually do for the community, as opposed to in negative people blaming positive people or positive people being stigmatized for passing on the virus. PrEP allows people to take that mutual responsibility. And for me, that is the best solution in the world.
I think also what PrEP has been able to do is to help remove the fear that exists with intimacy between positive and negative people. And I know there's a lot of debate for and against PrEP at the moment, particularly in terms of things like other STIs being transmitted and concerns around that. However, I think what PrEP is doing is allowing people that would have been afraid to be intimate with HIV positive people in the past to step away from that fear, or if that fear remains, to at least look at it critically and think, well, what is it that's actually causing that? And to develop new relationships that way.
I think it also then opens up the conversation in a whole different light than it has been before. In the past, it would have always been, the onus would have been on me to disclose that I'm HIV positive. Normally, I would have had to have been the one to check in with someone first, make sure they're okay. Nowadays, it's a two-way conversation. It's not just me leading that conversation and disclosing it. There's a lot of people out there that are posting on their page that they're PrEP friendly or they're taking PrEP. And for me, that it breaks down all the barriers and the fears around sexual encounters and potential HIV transmissions. It allows people to feel very safe in the bedroom. For me, for a long period of time, I didn't feel that I was safe in the bedroom. And I think that's the worst thing in the world. We should all be able to have lots of sex if you want to have lots of sex, and we shouldn't have any shame attached to sex. So PrEP actually manages to take that level of shame and that fear out of the bedroom, then I'm totally down with that. I think it's an amazing tool to obviously reduce new transmissions, to encourage the conversation between positive and negative people, and also eliminate that fear in the bedroom.
So with that, we'll actually have in future episodes one of the doctors from Pro Market Clinic coming in and talking exclusively about HIV, STIs, PrEP. However, I think one of the things I do want to comment on here is the fact that I think what PrEP has done has potentially changed where the stigma is focused. So in the past, I think there was a stigma for people who were HIV positive. Now it's kind of moved more into this slut shaming, for want of a bit. Well, it's the term that's being used, slut shaming. What's your thoughts around that?
I think you're right that the stigma has actually changed. And I think also too then, for me, what's really fascinating is where is that coming from and where does that need addressing? So for me, one of the interesting parts is I've been in a long-term, 3-year serodiscordant open long-distance relationship. And part of my conversation with my partner has been about taking PrEP and understanding the challenges and obstacles faced by someone who's HIV negative, understanding their fears around taking PrEP. And for me, that's been really fascinating because I have a very almost black and white view on the benefits of PrEP and what it can do to the community. To actually talk to someone who was very concerned about the long-term usage and adherence and all these concerns, for me, really opened up that within the negative community, there is a lot of stigma there. But I guess by the PrEP, by people taking PrEP, it is opening that conversation. Sadly, I think the slut shaming for me is a real, it's almost another divisive part of the community that I guess I'm baffled with. Sometimes the gay community that should come together through diversity and differences can often then be divided through those differences. So categorizing people into they're the sluts that are on PrEP and we're the ones that are not. And that's, for me, really scary to have such a divide. Essentially, we're all gay men and we all love sex with other men, and there's nothing wrong with that. And if there's a tool out there that enables us to have safer sex, then embrace that. How much someone decides to have sex is entirely their own business. And sex is great. We all should have as much of it as we possibly can. And things like PrEP allow for that. So the fact that people are labeling it as, the slut shaming is terrible because it actually then creates this stigma around the use of PrEP when PrEP can only do good things. It can't do bad things. I know there are concerns around PrEP and the rise of other STIs within the community because some people choose with PrEP that is their only prevention strategy, and it's a very successful prevention strategy. So there is concerns about the rise of STIs. On that note, as gay men, if we all take responsibility, have regular checks, find a doctor, like the lovely Dr. Vincent, have regular checkups and find a doctor that you're comfortable with to discuss these things, then we can all move forward and let go of some of this slut shaming and stigma attached to it. As gay men, we've had condoms rammed down our throats for 30 years and they're not working. They work for some people and that is completely fine. Everyone just needs to pick or choose some prevention strategy. And this was part of the conversation with my partner for quite a period of time. I'd said to my partner, I don't care what you pick, but we need to have some strategy. And up until my partner started taking PrEP, the responsibility sat with me entirely, and I didn't feel comfortable. I didn't feel that it should only sit with me. And so if you want to choose condoms, if you want to choose PrEP, if you want to choose PEP, whatever that may be, like, take your pick, but at least pick one of them, because for the first time in the history of HIV, people have options. And in the past, there weren't any options, and condoms don't work for everyone. People don't necessarily feel like they can let their inhibitions go, or some people like to feel skin-on-skin contact, and I don't want to feel shame around that. I'm a human being. I like skin-on-skin contact. So for me, it's about picking a tool, as you said, and I guess understanding the tool that you've chosen, and I guess what that means for the gay community and the wider HIV positive community as well.
I know there's going to be some people listening to this and feeling potentially even outrage at the whole, suggestion of not using condoms. But I think the key message here that you're trying to say, and it's a really valuable one, is whatever prevention strategy you choose, be aware of it and use it, as opposed to not worrying about it, not being aware of it, not educating yourself around it. Would that be a fair thing?
Oh, that's very true. I think take your pick, whatever works for you, whatever works for you and your partner, whatever works for you and your sexual partners, because we have those choices, we have those options. I can understand why people may feel some outrage around some of those comments, because I think there's still a misconception that taking PrEP is not classed as safe sex, and it actually is. Technically, it's another tool in the safer sex category. Just because you don't choose to use condoms doesn't mean you're having unsafe sex, because taking PrEP is not a direct correlation to unsafe sex. And I think that's the misconception that people are really struggling with, because we've had our whole gay history, the gay evolution, the education around what is safe sex. Wrap a condom on your dick. And that's fine, because they do work, but they don't work for everyone. And so I think over time, hopefully, people will start to let go of those fears around PrEP and the misconceptions about what PrEP can actually do for the community. So as opposed to focusing on the negative things that it can do to the community, about the potential rise in STIs, let's look at all those positives. The main positive being we can actually eliminate all new transmissions.
So what do you think we can do as a community then to help start these discussions more, to be able to feel more comfortable in discussing these things and normalizing them?
For me, it's all about the conversation. If it's a conversation with your mates, whether you're with friends or whoever it may be, don't censor your conversation around your sexual practice, because the more we talk about it, the more we normalize it. So don't be afraid to talk about, condoms and PrEP and anal sex and gonorrhea and syphilis and anal warts, whatever it may be. Like, they're part of being a human being, and all those STIs and things related to sex have such stigma attached to them, or such shame attached to them. And I think the more we talk about it, the more we start to use all these words as part of our common vernacular, the part of our common language, it normalizes it. So as opposed to maybe in the past, if I was sitting on the tram talking to someone, I would have probably then hushed and then said HIV. As opposed to now, like, I don't lower my voice and I'll be talking about PrEP and undetectable. And as opposed to those words and that conversation being a very specific time and place to be had in privacy or confidentiality, just make it part of general conversation. Stop feeling ashamed about talking about safer sex or condomless sex or barebacking, whatever the terms are. Let's embrace those terms and talk about them, as opposed to feeling ashamed about discussing these things. So for me, it's all about the conversation, the continual conversation. The more we have it, the more people feel comfortable having it, the more they'll have it with other people. If no one's having the conversation, no one's sharing it, no one's discussing it, we're all living in denial, we're all tapping into stigma, and we're all living our lives out of fear.
And I'd imagine when you do have those conversations, you get a pretty diverse range of responses to it as well. I can imagine even if you're on a tram talking about it, looking around you at the people who are eavesdropping in, there's probably a fair amount of embarrassment or blushing or obvious, noticeable awkwardness or discomfort of people who are hearing that conversation too.
I guess what I realise now, that's their issue and not mine anymore. And in the past, I would have seen that as my issue, but I at least clearly identify that that's their issue with the virus, or that's their issue with talking about sex so comfortably. And I guess, once again, through having this repeated conversation, it opens it up to people that maybe you wouldn't normally have the conversation with. For me, a really fine example is I have a shared studio in the city, and I was talking to a member of the studio at one stage about PEP, and she was like, "What is that?" And it was my little moment where I felt so happy in that conversation that I'd given them a piece of information that could potentially save their life in the future. They may never need to utilize it. They may not need to use that tool. But prior to this conversation, they had no idea about it at all. And I was like, well, it's kind of like the morning after pill for HIV. And that was a really profound moment for me, seeing the lack of knowledge within the straight community about some of those tools which can save their lives as well. And so by me having this conversation in relation to my public speaking with the Positive Speakers Bureau as part of Living Positive Victoria, it enabled me to tap into the straight community and give them tools about something that this person knew nothing about. And that was incredibly valuable and reinforced the power of the conversation and the power of talking comfortably around these things as well. They're not only for a gay patient and a doctor to discuss in a closed, sealed room. They can be a conversation in an open space, in a restaurant, on a tram, wherever that may be. And I'd love more people to be having those conversations as part of a daily conversation. I'd prefer to talk about HIV than the weather any day.
So if the Daniel now could go back in time to the Daniel 11 years ago and offer some words of advice, what kind of things do you think you would say to that version of Daniel to, I guess, A, avoid, and B, to seek solace and comfort?
There's two things that I would tell myself. The first one of those is to tap into the community, tap into people that have similar experiences. Nobody has to go this alone. Nobody is doing this by themselves. And it was once I connected into that community that I felt this level of self-acceptance with who I am and that I wasn't alone. So I guess that'd be the first thing that I would tell myself. The second thing that I'd tell myself is that it is going to be okay. And it's also okay to take medication. For me, that's I won't say the biggest mistake. That's one of the greatest lessons that I've learned around the virus is no matter how well I look after myself, no matter how much meditation I do, no matter how much yoga I do, no matter how many handstands I do, whatever it is, well, all these lifestyle factors will improve my health and increase my longevity. One needs to take medication. I don't know whether people can fight the virus by themselves without the medication. And so for me, what I didn't really understand was I looked at the negative components of what the medication was going to do and not the positive components. And because I didn't take medication for those couple years traveling overseas, my immune system was pretty much shot. And it took a long time to get that back to where it is today. And those first couple of years, once I started taking medication, had many ups and downs in there. It was a bit of a roller coaster ride. And I came back with the 2 AIDS-defining illnesses, and I came back with an incredibly high viral load and low T-cell count. After 12 months, once I had started to figure out my digestion and my viral load dropped to undetectable and my T-cell count started to improve, I thought that I was in a great place. But on my 36th birthday, 4 years ago, I came down with a case of shingles. And, I hit rock bottom at the time. I remember lying on my floor, my 1-bedroom flat in West Brunswick, and just thinking, Christ, is life going to get any better than this? Is it going to improve? Is my life always going to be this constant 2 steps forward, almost 2 steps back with my health? And if I'd have been able to tell myself 11 years ago that actually taking medication every single day is going to improve your life, that would have been something that I definitely would have told myself, because that would have changed the last 6 years for me as far as the ups and downs and the challenges that I've had.
What about for people who are diagnosed positive now? What advice would you give to them?
So the first bit of advice would be probably the same thing that happened to me when I did see the HIV specialist. Speak to someone, get a counsellor, talk about it. Nowadays, the course of action is basically a counselling session and also a script for HIV medication. I think there's been a lot of research done in relation to starting treatment early and the long-term effects of helping the immune system support itself as opposed to letting it get run down. So for me, they're the 2 really important things. And the other thing I'd also tell people is that, like my doctor told me, it is going to be okay. It doesn't have to change your life. In my instance, it's changed my life for the better because I've taken so many good things out of this experience, but it doesn't mean it has to change people's lives for the worse. And I think in the past, people thought it was a death sentence and, it did affect the rest of their life. And nowadays, I think there's so much information around successful treatment and the undetectable viral loads that it doesn't have to change people's lives. It's still a component of their life, but it's one component.
Daniel, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today.
Pleasure.
And for sharing with us the things that you did to help break through that shame that was holding you back. And we wish you all the best. I have no doubt we'll probably see you back for another episode at some point to discuss another topic. But wish you all the best again. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you very much. And once again, I'm very happy to talk about HIV, and I'd love to come back and discuss some of these areas in further detail.
Great. And with that, if anyone has any questions that they would love to have Danny address, please feel free to send them in to lawrence@releasehypnosis.com.au, and we'll make sure that in the next episode, we'll address those questions and get them responded to for you.
Could we also add at the end of that as well, if anyone is looking for any resources out there as well too, a couple of resources I'd love to recommend is the Institute of Many, the Facebook page for HIV positive people, as far as a conversation around living with HIV, rejection, anything. It's an amazing conversation. The other one is the Drama Down Under website as well too. If you contract any STIs and you're not comfortable telling people, you can let people know anonymously. So for me, they're 2 really amazing tools. And also PrEP Access Now. If anyone has any questions in regards to PrEP, it's a really great resource to debunk some of the myths about taking PrEP.
Excellent. Thank you so much for those resources. And we'll look forward to speaking to all of you in the next episode in the next couple of weeks. Take care.